everyone. Today we will be talking about weather forecasting. But first, let's have our learning objectives. At the end of these lessons, the students must be able to describe weather forecasting, compare and contrast surface map and upper air map, and value the importance of weather forecasting in different segments of society. So first, let's define what is weather forecast. Weather forecasting is the scientific prediction of the state of atmospheric conditions or hypothesis about the weather based on reliable data. The weather forecasting is the prediction of what the atmosphere will be like in a particular place by using technology and scientific knowledge to make the weather observations. In other words, it's a way of predicting things like cloud cover, rain, snow, wind speed, and temperature before they happen. So, the weather forecast is simply a scientific estimate of a future weather condition. It is a scientific estimate. Ang weather forecasting is not new to us since makita raman nato ni siya sa television, commonly kang Kuya Kim and other weather forecasters, and also maka-update ta through online, right? So how is a weather forecast made? So in forecasting the weather, meteorologists must at least know something about the existing weather conditions over a large area before he can make a reliable forecast. So the accuracy of his forecast depends largely upon his knowledge of the prevailing weather conditions over a wide area. So it is so understandable here that a meteorologist must at least know something about the existing weather condition or must have a knowledge about the current weather conditions over a large area. Because if magmatter siya sa specific area lang is there might be instances that the weather data is inaccurate or dili mao ang iyang ma-collect nga mga data. So the forecast decision is based on various forecasting tools. The basic tool of a weather forecast is the weather map. So the weather map is parehas aning sa kong illustration given diri. This is the weather map. So the weather map depicts the distribution patterns of atmospheric pressure, wind, temperature, and humidity at the different levels of the atmosphere. So, diri sa weather map is makita nato ang mga weather variables. Ulan, ang kainit, ang kakusog sa hangin, diri na ilalarawan ang mga weather variables. There are two types of the basic weather map, namely the surface map and the upper air map. There are 5 standard levels of the upper air maps that are constructed twice daily at 12 hourly interval. So, ang upper air map is gina-construct lang siya twice daily. Upper air weather observations is done in the outer space. Is done in the space. It goes around the earth. So, dito ra na siya sa space. Dito ra ang observations from the space. So, ang surface maps are made 4 times daily at 6 hourly intervals. So, ang surface map is ginabuhat 4 times daily. Unlike sa upper air map is gina-construct lang siya twice daily, ang surface map is 4 times daily. So, ang surface maps is, or ang surface observations, weather observations is done over land and sea. Dili lang siya ma-observe diri sa palibot, surface observations. Mao na siya ang mga weather variables sa surface maps. The upper air map differ from surface weather map, whereas ang surface weather conditions are plotted on a map of constant altitude, normally sea level, while the upper air map or the upper air weather conditions are plotted on maps of constant air pressure. So, mahimo raman ang weather observations dito sa space. So, ang ginaplot lang diri sa upper air map are the constant air pressures, the altitude at which the particular pressure is located and is reported on these maps. So, mao ni ang akong example sa surface map, kaning current surface. And the upper air maps is kani. Refer to my illustration therein. So, the procedures of weather forecasting. So, ang weather forecasting is dili dayon mahimo nga diha dayon. Dili dayon mabuhat because ang weather forecasting is difficult, most especially kung wala kay mga observations and mga instruments nga ginagamit. In making weather forecast is natay gina-follow nga mga procedures and then mga systematic processes, science systematic processes. First step is the observation. Observation of different weather elements are made simultaneously as follows. Surface observations are made at least every 3 hours over land and sea. Because it is surface observation, so diri lang na siya mahimo over land and sea. So, ginabuhat ni siya at least every 3 hours. Surface observations. Then the land-based weather stations around the world and automatic stations observe the atmospheric pressure, wind direction and speed, temperature of air, humidity, clouds, precipitation, and visibility using standard weather instruments such as the barometer, wind vane, anemometer, thermometer, psychometer, or hygrometer, and rain gauge. Ang land-based weather stations and the automatic stations is gamit nila ang mga standard weather instruments like this. First is barometer. The second one is anemometer. The third one is rain gauge. Fourth one, below sa barometer is hygrometer, and the last one is the wind vane. So, ginagamit ni siya sa mga meteorologists kini nga mga instrument to measure or to collect data and observation sa mga weather conditions or mga weather patterns. So, the upper air stations around the world also made observations at least every 12 hours. Like what I've said earlier, ginahimo lang siya every 12 hours or twice a day. So, it is done in space. So, there are 5 standard levels. So, mauna ni siya the pressure, temperature, dew point temperature, wind and direction, and speed are observed at selected levels in the atmosphere using radiosondes. So, ang radiosondes is the instrument dito sa space, the weather balloon. Muna siya ang radiosondes. So, radiosondes are instrument that is carried aloof by a balloon to send back information on atmospheric temperature, pressure, and humidity by means a small radio transmitter. So, kaning weather balloon is ginagamit to measure the atmospheric temperature, pressure, and humidity by means a small radio transmitter. So, naani siya kaning below sa balloon is naani siya small radio transmitter. And then, mag-transmit ni siya mga kaning information diri din sa ground receiving stations, diri sa receiving equipment. So, another apparatus is the theodolite. It is used in observing wind direction and speed also at selected levels. So, kaning apparatus, theodolite, is kaning the yellow one. Kaning sa ubos sa radiosondes. Mao ni siya ang theodolite. In addition to this, commercial airplanes observe the weather along their routes at specified times. Kaning theodolite. Next is meteorological satellites. Geostationary and polar orbiting take pictures of the cloud imagery of the atmosphere. These satellites take picture of the Earth's cloud formations every hour and continuously respectively. So ang geostationary and polar orbiting is like sa akong gihatag diri sa picture. Ang geostationary orbit is diri ga-orbit ang mga weather satellite. Geostationary orbit is a circular orbit above Earth's equator in which a satellite's orbital period is equal to Earth's rotation period of 23 hours and 56 minutes. So, mao na siya ang geostationary orbit. And ang polar orbiting is different from geostationary because murag pa-vertical ni siya polar orbiting. Diri gaagi ang uban weather satellites. Polar orbiting satellites is an orbit in which a satellite passes above or nearly above Earth's north and south poles on each revolution. It therefore has an inclination of very close to 90 degrees to the equator. Ma-differentiate na to paths sa weather satellites. So, the weather radars are also used to observe the cloud coverage within the range of the radar. So, ang kaning weather radars is another instrument dito sa space para makakollect og mga weather data. So, ang weather radars is kani siya nga instrument. These are useful tools to obtain detailed information about clouds and storms, mainly cyclones, tornadoes, and hurricanes. Second step is collection and transmission of weather data. So, ganiha is observation man. So, through observation is makakolekta og mga kanang data about weather, and then through the use of the instruments kanang collect mga data nga kaning accurate. The weather observations, which are condensed into coded figures, symbols, and numerals, are transmitted via radiophone, teletype, facsimile machine, or telephone to designated collection centers for further transmission to the central forecasting station. Diri, posible nga ang mga coded figures, symbols, and numerals kay dili kay nato masabtan pa. The weather satellite pictures are transmitted to ground receiving stations while radar observations are transmitted to forecasting centers through local communication systems. Itong mga weather satellites is done through space, so gina-transmit ni sila through dito sa ground through aning mga radiophone. But katong mga weather instruments like the radar, naraman to siya diri sa ground. So, gina-transmit lang siya diri sa forecasting centers through local communication system. Third step, plotting of weather data. So, after observing, after collecting and transmitting the weather data is third, plotting of weather data. Upon receipt of the coded messages, they are decoded and each set of observations is plotted in symbols or numbers on the weather charts over the respective areas or regions. After dito sa pag-collect sa mga weather data is ginadecode na sila, which is ang decoded data or mga observations is ginaplot nila in symbols or numbers wherein nakita makasabot na like temperature in Celsius or in symbols like H is, di ba? High pressure and low is low pressure. And observations made over land and sea are plotted on the surface or main sea level charts which are prepared 4 times a day. Mga instrument like radiosonde, theodolite, aircraft, and satellite wind observations nga ginahimo dito sa space are plotted on upper level charts which are prepared twice daily. First step, after observing, collecting, and transmitting data and then plotting the data is the analysis of weather maps, satellite and radar imageries, and other data. The current weather maps are analyzed as follows. The surface chart. So the data plotted on this weather map are analyzed isobarically. This means the same atmospheric pressure at different places are interconnected with a live taking into consideration the direction of the wind. Through this analysis, weather systems or the so-called centers of action such as high and low pressure areas, tropical cyclones, cold and warm fronts, intertropical convergence zone can be located and delineated. There is a surface chart, plot ni siya and analyze isobarically. So, ang isobar is gidiscuss naman na before. So, the isobar is a line drawn on a weather map connecting points of equal pressure. The isobars are generated from mean sea level, pressure reports, and the pressure values are given in millibars. 1013 millibars, it is the average sea level air pressure. Next is the upper air chart. The data plotted on this weather map are analyzed using the streamline analysis. Lines are drawn to illustrate the flow of the wind. With this kind of analysis, anticyclones or high pressure areas and cyclones or low pressure areas can be delineated. So there is a upper air charts. Diri ginaplot ang didto naka-illustrate kung unsa na siya kakusog or unsa ang flow sa wind, like naay lines and kanang wave. Next is numerical weather prediction model outputs. The computer plotted weather maps are analyzed manually so that weather systems like cyclones and anticyclones, troughs, etc. are located. Next is the monitor weather charts. The monitor weather charts plotted data on the cross-section rainfall and 24-hour pressure change charts are analyzed to determine the movement of wind waves, rainfall distribution, and the behavior of the atmospheric. So, muna siya ang monitor weather charts. Next and last step, after the analysis of all available meteorological information or data has been completed, the preparation of forecast follows. So the first and one of the preliminary steps is the determination as accurately as the data permit of the location 24 hours hints the different weather systems and the existing weather over a particular region. So in many cases, a fairly satisfactory estimate of the direction and rate of movement may be made by simply measuring the movement during the last 12 or 24 hours and then extrapolating or extending this movement into the future and hence what weather will be experienced in different areas in the immediate future. So, there is a fifth step. Muna siya ang formulation of the forecast. So, sa pag-formulate nila sa forecast is gina-make sure nila nga kani is ang weather data is accurate. So, the forecasts are then aired in various radio stations by telephone or sent by telefax machines a few minutes after completion and are immediately sent to the weather stations nationwide. So the copies are also furnished to different media outlets without delay. So next is the types of weather forecasting. So there are three types of weather forecasting: the short range weather forecasting, the medium range and the long range weather forecasting. So the short range weather forecast is most useful predictions of weather wherein forecasts valid from few hours to 48 hours and sometimes 72 hours. So this short weather forecast is valid from 1 day to 2 days and sometimes 3 days. It is so helpful in daily activities like in transportation and in fishermen. So the medium range weather forecast, it covers the time span from 3 days to 3 weeks. So kaning medium range weather forecast is the prediction helpful for farmers. So this prediction is done by calculating the average of past and present weather condition. Is the long range weather forecast. It covers a time span from a fortnight to a season of the year. So these predictions are basically statements. Exact accuracy is minimum and not so detailed information. So the next and last one is on the basis of specific purposes for different segments of society into following four types. So the importance of weather forecasting in different segments of society. The aviation forecast. So these reports and forecasts enable pilots to make informed decisions regarding weather and flight safety before and during a flight. So the aviation weather forecast solutions help to improve safety, efficiency, and performance. The next one is shipping forecast. So the weather can be difficult to predict, especially on waterways, but good forecasting can help ships and their crews navigate and make decisions that reduce risk. So, like ang local forecast is important, most especially sa atua nga natay daily activities, natay mga gustong pangbuhaton outdoor, and also in our kanang kaning in our work, local forecast is so important for us to prevent from other incidents, like if ever magbiyahe ta in long distance, makabalot ta kung advisable ba nga magbiyahe ana nga adlaw or not. And also makaprotekta sa tuang, or it can save lives, and also makaprepare ta kung unsa pod ang atong suoton because of that specific weather condition. So local forecast. In agricultural based forecast is the ability to reliably forecast for crop production, yield, quality is valuable for economic planning and commodities forecasting as well, ensuring global food security. So in agricultural based forecast, it is important to all the farmers, most especially in informing management decisions. So diri makadecide sila kung ay because of agricultural based forecast, makadecide sila when to to plant and harvest the crops, or kung kanus-a sila magpugas, kanus-a sila mananom, kanus-a sila magharvest, and all the activities agriculturally. So it is so helpful to them for them to lessen the damages. So in conclusion, with the advancement of technology, weather forecasting has developed to its level best, but there is yet to develop. As far as a nature is so unpredictable, natural calamity and weather disturbances causing devastating destruction surprisingly. To save our Mother Earth, scientists and meteorologists are also advancing their knowledge about weather forecasting. So weather forecasting is so helpful in our daily lives for us to protect our lives, to protect our properties, and to lessen the damages, and also to be prepared in um future happiness. So that would be all. Thank you and God bless. This is your reporter. Thank you for listening.